بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. So yesterday we left off talking about Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and the claim that he went through 3 stages in his development, which our authors mentioned are false claims. And they were that the first stage is that he was following the way of Al-Mu'tazila and that he did that for about 40 years. And the second stage, they said he was following Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kulab, and they claimed that Ibn Kulab was a misguided theologian. And then he left that, and they said he went to his third path or his third stage, where he returned to the Aqidah of the Salaf and of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And what has been reported, which we mentioned, refuting that first premise, is that Imam al-Ash'ari was following the Mu'tazila creed, and then on a Friday on the Jumu'ah, he went in front of the public and denounced those bad beliefs of al-Mu'tazila, and that he was, and mentioned that he was following the path of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And we mentioned the reports of the scholars who related the story of Imam al-Ash'ari, and how all of them mentioned that Imam al-Ash'ari was following the Mu'tazila, then he defended the way of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So now the authors are going to mention the second premise, that they said that Imam al-Ash'ari was following the way of Ibn Kulab, and that Ibn Kulab was misguided. So let's see what our ulama they said about that claim. Now, Bismillah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, refuting the second premise. First of all, we concede that after he abandoned the doctrine of the Mu'tazila, Imam Abu al-Hasan followed the way of Abdullah ibn Sa'id al-Kulab. We agree with the claimants in this part of the premise. However, they differ with us regarding Ibn Kulab's way. We believe that his path and the path of the Salaf was one in reality, because Ibn Kulab was among the Imams of Al-Sunna wal Jama'ah, and he followed the path of the pious predecessors.
Here's a point that you must be aware, that many of those who deviated from the way of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they're famous for claiming scholars who they want to agree with them, and scholars who they disagree with to consider them beyond the fold of Ahl-Sunnah. And what they try to do is make it whoever didn't follow their particular way, as if that was the only way to understand things, had deviated from the way of Ahl-Sunnah. And as we talked about in the beginning of the book, the Ahl-Sunnah, even the Salaf, they had different methodologies to approach the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not all of them did what is called a tafweed, or non-specific interpretation. Some of them, they did a detailed interpretation, which is a ta'wil at-tafsili, and that is reported among the Salaf and the great scholars after them. And Ibn Kulab, rahimahullah ta'ala, was among those great scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in the 3rd century who did practice both methodologies of as-Salaf. Now, meaning at-tafweed and at-ta'wil. Now,
Al-Taj al-Subki said, in any case, Ibn Kulab is from Al-Sunna. I saw that Imam Diya al-Din al-Khatib, the father of
al-Khatib.
Al-Khatib, the father of Imam Fakhr al-Din al-Razi, mentioned Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kulab at the end of his book, Ghaya al-Mara'im fi Ilm al-Kalam. He wrote, among the Sunni theologians during the reign of al-Ma'mun was Abdullah ibn Sa'id al-Tamimi, who demolished the Mu'tazila in the gathering of al-Ma'mun and exposed them with his rhetorical skills.
Here, I know all these names, they may be taxing on some of you, but let's start slowly getting in the habit of learning about our scholars and learning about their books. Even if at this stage you don't have access to them, you cannot read them, right? But we want you to get in the habit. So this one book is a famous book of Tajuddin as-Subki. Hold on one second. I'll show you later. Called Tabaqat al-Kubra, right? Tabaqat al-Shafiyyat al-Kubra. It is the biography of the great Shafi scholars. Tajuddin as-Subki, he was among the foremost scholars of history in the 8th century. From Egypt, he is the son of the great Mujtahid scholar Taqiyuddin as-Subki. And he mentions the father of Fakhruddin al-Razi. Fakhruddin al-Razi, he was among the great scholars of the beginning of the 7th century. He was an imam of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah among the Ash'aris, and his father relates about Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kulab as among the scholars of Kalam from Ahl Sunnah, and he mentioned him specifically as Ahl Sunnah. So those people who were known to be Ahl Sunnah counted him as Ahl Sunnah. Now,
Al-Hafidh ibn Asakir, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, I read from a letter from the handwriting of the Hadith scholar of Egypt, Ali B. Baqa al-Waraq, that was written by Maliki jurist Abu Muhammad Abdullah ibn Abi Zayd al-Qaywarani, who was the leading scholar of Maliki school in the Maghrib during his time.
And he is the famous Maliki scholar for the Malikis who wrote the book Risala. So you say Risala ibn Abi Zayd. This is Ibn Abi Zayd, as Imam al-Hafiz ibn Asakir is mentioning. Now,
he wrote it to Ali ibn Ahmed ibn Ismail al-Baghdadi, a Mu'tazili, as a response to a letter written by the latter to the Malikis of Qaywaran, in which he offered them advice that would convert them to the Mu'tazila doctrine. In the letter, produced in full by Ibn Asakir, it reads, and you attributed him to innovation, then you did not mention a statement from him that can be identified as an innovation or be used to call him an innovator.
Meaning him, Ibn Kulab. You're ascribing Ibn Kulab to Bid'ah. Naam, go ahead.
We know of no one who has accused Ibn Kulab of innovation. What has reached us is that he closely follows the Sunnah and takes it upon himself to refute the Jamia and other innovators. This is a powerful testimony from Imam.
And here, so you're finding this is a Shafi scholar mentioning that he was of Ahl Sunnah, This is a Maliki scholar, and these are top level scholars mentioned. He was Al-Sunna. So you'll find that from the different madhahib, the top scholars counted him, as reported by top scholars, we counted him among the scholars of Kalam of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now,
This is a powerful testimony from Imam Ibn Abi Zayd, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, regarding Ibn Kulab and his close adherence to the Sunnah and refutations against the innovators, and that he knew of no one who accused him of innovation.
and here when you say this, because yes, when you say this, you know people by the great scholars who mentioned them. So when we want to know what was the opinion of someone, we don't ask their people who have enmity towards them already and so you ask the people who are in their field, the people who are scholarly in that, who are fair and just about those people. And by that testimony, you have two things. You have the father Fakhruddin Ar-Razi, who was a great scholar of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and you have Ibn Abi Zayd mentioning that he was from the people of Ahl Sunnah. And then not only that, you have two Hufadh, among them Tajuddin al-Subki and Al-Hafidh ibn Asakir, mentioning in their respective books what? That he was from Ahl Sunnah. So they're relating from the scholars before them, and they all had their asanid to those scholars, unbroken chains, which shows you what? That Ahl Sunnah had a certain position in regard to this individual. Now,
Sheikh Muhammad Zahid al-Kawthari commented on this in his edition of Tabyin Kathib al-Muftari. He was the
here,
Imam.
Imam al-Kawthari, he was among the last great scholars from the Ottoman Empire. He moved to Egypt, where he became among the foremost scholars of Egypt. Originally, he was in Turkey with the Ottoman Empire, and he is known, Imam al-Kawthari, for being imam in his time of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So you're talking about someone who, if someone was known to be a deviant, of all the people in that time, in the time of Imam al-Kawthari, he would have been the most fierce to refute them, right? And here, the authors mention what al-Kawthari mentioned in his edition of the book of Al-Hafidh ibn Asakir called Tibyan al-Kadhib al-Muftari. He has his own edition, and it has very beneficial notes as an introduction to the book and footnotes. Now,
He was the Imam of the Sunni theologians during the time of Ahmed, and he used to keep the company of Al-Harith ibn Asad.
Al-Harith ibn Asad is Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, who was the Sheikh of Junayd al-Baghdadi. So listen to what he said. He was among the scholars of Kalam of Ahl Sunnah during the time of Ahmed. So Ibn Kulab lived during that time, and he kept the company, right, of Al-Harith al-Muhasibi. Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, he was the Sheikh of Junayd al-Baghdadi. Who is Junayd al-Baghdadi? Junayd al-Baghdadi is the leader of the people of Tasawwuf. Absolutely. They call him Ra'isul Qawm, al-Qawm, the leader of the Sufis, Al-Arif Billah. And all of the Sufi paths, the Turuq al-Sufiya, they have a connection back to Sayyidina Junayd al-Baghdadi. Now,
some people who are weak in theology attack him. Al-Kawthari then proceeded to examine the issues that caused some to attack him, and he explained how those issues are not distant from the sacred law and the intellect. Ibn Qadi Shuba said,
and this is the Shafi'i, and he wrote in his Tabaqat al-Shafi'iyya, he has a book of biography of Shafi'i scholars. Naam.
He was one of the major theologians and he was from Al-Sunna. His path and the path of Al-Harith al-Muhasibi was followed by Abu al-Hasan al-Ashari.
MashaAllah. So Al-Ash'ari came after them, and Imam Al-Ash'ari was in the same path. And how did he describe them? They are min kibar al-mutakallimin wa min ahli sunnati wal jama'ah. They are among the major scholars of kalam, and they were from ahli sunnati wal jama'ah. Now,
Jamal al-Din al-Isnawi said he
and
was
he is
one,
the Shafi'i scholar as well, famous for fiqh and usul al-fiqh and other sciences of Islam. He's an Egyptian scholar.
he was one of the major theologians and he was from Al-Sunna. Al-Abadi mentioned him in the rank of Abu Bakr al-Sayrafi and said, he is one of our companions among the theologians. Imam al-Dahabi said, the man is the
And
closest.
Al-Arabi is very strict in knowing, is very famous in knowing the biographies of the scholars and weighing the scholars. He mentioned this in his book, Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. Now,
The man is the closest of the theologians to the Sunnah. Nay, he is among their debaters.
and
Sheikh
here you got to remember that Al-Dhahabi, he was among the main students of Ibn Taymiyyah. So he was really opposed to the scholars of Al-Kalam. However, he would recognize the rank and the status of those great scholars and know their positions. So you'll get an indication of his disavowal of Ilm Kalam, but considering this person as what? One who is close to the Sunnah, meaning that they were people who were Al-Sunnah, but just those people who followed Ibn Taymiyyah, who didn't like Kalam or the scholars of Kalam, disputed with them in that issue. But as for them being among Al-Sunnah, that's not a dispute.
Sheikh Shuaib al-Arnaut commented on this in his edition of Al-Dahabi's Siyar.
And Sheikh Shuaib Arnaut, he's a famous hadith scholar. He was in our time. He passed, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was a Hanafi scholar. He lived in Damascus. And his books are some of the most important books in knowing hadith and the ranks of hadith and cross-referencing works of hadith. And he did a 30-something volume edition of Al-Dhahabi's book, Siyar A'lam al-Nubala. And in his footnotes, he mentioned about Ibn Kulab. He said, now,
he was the Imam of Al-Sunnah and its reference in his time. Imam al-Haramain al-Juwayni described him in Al-Irshad, saying, he is from our companions.
Here, so Imam al-Juwayni, you know Imam al-Juwayni, he was the Sheikh of Imam al-Ghazali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He has a famous book in Aqidah called Al-Irshad. And in the Irshad, al-Juwayni described Ibn Kulam بِأَنَّهُ مِنْ أَصْحَابِنَا, as he is from our campaigns, meaning he was on the methodology of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah and the same methodology of the Ash'ari. Now,
we have already mentioned the statement of Ibn Khaldun. He held the views He held the views of Abdullah ibn Sa'id bi Kulab, Abu al-Abbas al-Qalanisi, and al-Harith al-Muhasibi among the followers of the Salaf and the path of the Sunnah. Here he described him as a follower of the Salaf, and that Imam al-Ashari held his views and the views of al-Qalanisi and al-Muhasibi, all followers of the Salaf and upon the way of the Sunnah.
So here, that same thing would apply to, if he was going to give it to Ibn Kulab, it would also refer to Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, and then Al-Harith al-Muhasibi, who was the Sheikh of a Junaid. Those same claims would be given to those as well. They were all in the same path. Now,
Allama Kamal al-Din al-Bayadi,
who's a Hanafi scholar, and he wrote about the Aqidah and Creed of Imam Abu Hanifa.
May
Now,
Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, that is because al-Maturidi detailed the doctrine of the Imam Abu Hanifa and his Sunni companions who appeared before al-Ashari. There has never been an era bereft of those who aid and manifest the religion. He, al-Ashari, was also preceded in that, aiding the doctrine of Al-Sunnah by Imam Abu Muhammad Abdullah ibn Sayyid al-Qatan.
which is Ibn Kulab. So here you have Shafi'is, Malikis, and Hanafis, all of them counting Ibn Kulab, and these were the great scholars of all those three schools, counting Ibn Kulab among the scholars of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now,
In other words, Imam Ibn Kulab preceded Imam Abu al-Hasan in aiding the religion and manifesting the Sunnah. Al-Hafid Ibn Hajar said in his biography of Ibn Kulab,
in
after,
this book, Lisan al-Mizan, which is a book of biographies of narrators of hadith.
after mentioning the statement of Ibn al-Nadim, who was a Mu'tazili, he was from the Hashawi Riffraff. What he means is that a Hashawi is whoever is upon the way of the Salaf by abandoning figurative interpretation of the verses and hadith reports about the divine attributes. They are also called the people of non-specific interpretation.
And here, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith, he mentions about Ibn Kulab there, and he says what? That he was on the path of the Salaf, leaving off a ta'wil, meaning a specific ta'wil of the verses in Hadith related to the sifat of Allah, so he was mufawwida. And sometimes some people misunderstood that as being a literalist, which is not the case. Now,
Imam al-Shahrastani said, until the time of Abdullah ibn Sayyid al-Kulab, Abu al-Abbas al-Qalanisi, al-Harith,
Shahrastani is famous for talking about different sects in Islam, as we mentioned about Al-Imam Abdul Qahir al-Baghdadi and his book Farq Bain al-Firaq. Shahrastani, he did the same type of work. Now,
al-Harith ibn Asad al-Muhasibi, they were from the generality of the Salaf. However, they engaged in speculative theology and aided the doctrines of the Salaf,
which is called Ilm al-Kalam. And Ilm al-Kalam is the science by which you explain the tenets of faith, both by textual transmitted proofs from the Quran and Sunnah and proofs from the sound intellect. Now,
with theological proofs and rational evidence. Some of them wrote books and some of them taught. Then there was the debate that took place between Abu al-Hasan al-Ashari and his teacher regarding the issue.
His teacher al-Jubai, who was the leader of al-Mu'tazila. Now,
of best interest, al-Salah wal-Asla. They debated, and al-Ashari then switched camps and assisted the Sunni, doctrine with theological methods, and it became a school of Al-Sunnah, and the term Ash'ari replaced the term Sifatiyya.
So as here, as Shahrastani is mentioning, all of these people were in the same path. They were the Sunni scholars of Ahl Sunnah, and Imam al-Ash'ari followed in their methodology and defended Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah to the madhab of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah by the great work of Imam al-Ash'ari became known as al-Ash'ariyya. Now,
we will go further and say that not only was Imam al-Ash'ari upon the methodology of Ibn Kulab, but it was also the same doctrine of the major Imams, like Imam al-Bukhari, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him.
Because the issue of kalam that they spoke about for Ibn Kulab is the same issue that Imam al-Bukhari was accused about. So you're going to find, even today, we have this in our time today, that the early Hanbalis, many of them were opposed to the people of Kalam, right? And some of them, they had a strict disagreement with that, and it is reflected in their writings, in their positions. And then the modern day Mushabbiha Mujassima took a lot of those positions to an extreme, and they considered everyone who didn't follow their methodology as outside of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now,
Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said,
and
in,
this is in Fathul Bari, which is the commentary of Sahih al-Bukhari.
in all that al-Bukhari cited concerning the explanation of rare words, he quoted from the people of that science, such as Abu Ubaidah, al-Nadir ibn Shumayl, al-Farah, and others. As for the matters of jurisprudence, most of it is taken from al-Shafi'i, Abu Ubaid, and their likes. As for the matters of theology, Musa'il, Kalamiyah, most of it is taken from al-Karabisi, Ibn Kulab, and their likes.
So here, Imam Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar, he mentions when there's cases related to belief in theology, he will find that Al-Bukhari followed those methodologies himself in approach, and among those that he followed was the way of Ibn Kulab. Now,
All of these citations clearly show that Imam Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kulab was upon the way of the Salaf and the Sunnah. What were
and
the
here, keep in mind that we said the Salaf, they had two methodologies, the methodology of at-ta'wil and the methodology of at-tafweed. And scholars, depending on the situation, would use either methodology, the scholars after the Salaf. Now,
What were the accusations against Ibn Kulab? If the Imams clarified this matter, then why was Abdullah ibn Sa'id ibn Kulab accused of opposing the way of the Salaf? Ibn Abdul Barr explained a bit about this in his biographical notice for Al-Karabisi. He said,
Ibn Abdul Bar is Maliki. He's a great Maliki scholar, famous Maliki scholar, and he wrote much in Maliki fiqh and in biographies as well. So when he's talking about Al-Qarabisi, he's also going to talk about his contemporaries. So that's why you'll read a biography. And sometimes when you read books of biography, they're very good because when you read a biography of someone, that person didn't live by themselves. They had other people around them. So when you study the biography of other people as well, you're going to get information about scholars. No, go ahead.
there was a strong friendship between him, Al-Qarabisi, and Ahmed ibn Hanbal. But when the former opposed the latter regarding the Quran, their friendship turned into enmity. Both of them would speak ill about the other. This is because Ahmed used to say, whoever says that the Quran is created is a Jami. Whoever says that the Quran is the speech of Allah Ta'ala but does not say that it is uncreated or created is Waqifi, hesitant. And whoever says my pronunciation of the Quran is created is an innovator. Now, Al-Qarabisi, Abdullah ibn Kulab, Abu Thawr, Dawood ibn Ali, and their rank used to say that the Quran spoken by Allah Ta'ala is an attribute among his attributes and cannot be created. The recitation of the reader in his speaking with the Quran is his own acquisition and action that is created and is a hikayah, narration of Allah Ta'ala's speech.
And here, so this expression that's saying the recitation of the reciter and his speech is an acquired deed and is created, and this should be only for teaching, not something that we say regular. Uh, there were many great scholars, and he mentioned all of those great scholars: Al-Qarabisi, Ibn Kulab, Abu Thawr. He had his own madhab. Abu Thawr, he had his own madhab. So did Dawood ibn Ali al-Zahiri. He had his own madhab as well. All of those were great mujtahid scholars, as well as Imam al-Bukhari, who had the same position. Now,
the Hanbali companions of Ahmed ibn Hanbal had forsaken al-Qarabisi, declared him an innovator, and spoke ill about both him and all who spoke with his belief in that matter. This is the reason why Abdullah ibn Kulab was rebuked and why some said he was not upon the way of the Sunnah and the Salaf. This matter becomes even clearer if we understand that these imams engaged in speculative theology in order to refute
What in the kalam? Mm.
and expose their deviancy. Now, Ahmed used to hate the way of speculative theology as a method of clarifying the truth, and he used to prefer stopping it where the Salaf stopped. This is undoubtedly the truth as long as there is no pressing need for speculative theology.
Here, there is something I should mention here because it's come back in our time. There is a difference, a vast difference between the Hanbali madhab and the Wahhabi Salafi madhab. What do I mean? You cannot always attribute, even though a lot of them said, like Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, that I follow the Hanbali madhab. But if you study Imam Ahmed and the scholars of the Hanbali school in their creed, it is not the same at all. And that's a future study that we're going to do and talk about, because this trend, every time that their misguidance is shown, they transfer to another name and another methodology. So you got to kind of track this stuff to see where it's going. And the new trend is Hanbali Athari, right? I'm Hanbali in fiqh, and I'm Athari because I follow the Aqidah of Imam Ahmed. But when you study that Aqidah, it is the essence and same Aqidah of Al-Wahhabiyya or so-called Salafiyya. But now it's just the new name as Athari. So you got to distinguish the Hanbali methodology, which was really a tafweed, from those who use the term Athari or Hanbali and Aqidah, but are really Wahhabi. And they are Mujassim and Mushabbih, but they trick the words. So one should distinguish between the two. And here, understanding the Imam Ahmed's methodology, when you translate that methodology in English, you're going to lose that methodology. And people keep forgetting that. So Imam Ahmed's methodology, strict methodology, and not in all cases, not in every case, but in general, was to recite the verses and hadith that relate to the attributes of Allah and make a full stop. Don't translate it, don't explain it, don't switch words. Stop. Yadallah fawqa aydihim, and then stop. Nothing else. Right? Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. Stop. Yanziru Rabbana tabaraka wa ta'ala. Stop. Right? No, I mean the rest of the hadith. Recite the report, recite the verse, and stop. That's it. No comment, no statement, no nothing. And what is understood from that, laysa kamithlihi shay. No thing resembles him. No discussion at all. Not translating, not putting in another word. That's the methodology of Imam Ahmed. Not saying Yadallahi fawqa aydihim and then translate and say the hands of Allah is above their hands and Allah got hands. That's not the methodology of Imam Ahmed. Imam Ahmed would not have permitted for you to translate that to English or another language. Yadallahi fawqa aydihim, and stop. Don't use another word in another language to describe Allah's words. You see my point? Stop. Is this point clear? Allah. Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
Al-Taj al-Subki, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, We say, as Ahmed used to say, the correct view is that there should be no engaging in speculative theology as long as there is no pressing need for it. No matter what the
Here,
case.
so notice Tajuddin Subki, who was a great Ash'ari. Hey, listen, I got all these names, right? That's why I said we got to keep going over. The names, they're very significant, especially when you talk about chains of narration and how we reach our knowledge. But mashallah, we can do it step by step by step. We're not going to read something one time. We're going to read it several times. We're going to go over it. We're going to talk about it in different cases. And inshallah, you'll get it. It'll become clear. Now, but I need you to start really like highlighting, take one name or two name, remember the book, and just have that in your mind. Remember when they lived, like Tajuddin Subki, he lived in the 8th century. He died in the year 7071. He was the son of Taqiyuddin Subki. And then as you start learning more, real Sunni Islam, you're going to see how significant these scholars were.
No matter what the case may be, the view for which Abdullah ibn Kulab was declared an innovator does not entail the description of blameworthy innovation or being against the way of the Salaf, especially if we consider that this doctrine on the pronunciation of the Quran was held by many illustrious imams from the Ummah of Islam, such as those mentioned by Ibn Abdul Barr.
And another way to say illustrious Imam, you can say Akabir. It means the greatest Imams of this nation, right? Now, don't worry about all the names for right now. Just get the point. If you can get the point, then slowly but surely you'll build on the names. I mean, let me explain what is. Let me share something with you after the point. Go ahead, I'll come back to it.
Others who held this belief include Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, al-Hadath, al-Muhasibi, Muhammad bin Nasr al-Marwazi, and others. The problems that occurred between al-Bukhari and his sheikh al-Buhali were only because of this issue.
Buhali.
Buhali, sorry, was only because of this issue. Imam al-Bukhari wrote a book on this topic called Khaliq Af'al al-Ibad. In,
Khalqu Af'al al-Ibad,
in order to support
which
his
means the creating the slave's deeds.
in order to support his viewpoint and refute his opponents. Al-Taj al-Subki, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, the truth regarding the issue of pronunciation is with him, al-Bukhari. No one of
We're going
intellect.
to talk about this issue in more detail when we go into Aqidah Tahawiyah. It was a situation that exists in their time, which there was the group Al-Mutazila who said that the Quran was created. And Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah, they said that the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is not created. And then there are details to that explanation where we had all these differences. Now,
No one of intellect among creation doubts that his pronunciation is from his contingent actions and are created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the exalted. The only reason Imam Ahmed radiallahu anhu rebuked it was because of his repugnant expression. As for Imam Muslim, he used to openly declare his belief in the issue of pronunciation, and did he not conceal it?
and he did not conceal it.
And it must be a typo. And he did not conceal it.
Right.
Okay. Hafid
Is
ibn
a typo there?
Yes.
Yeah, fix it. So
And
Imam Muslim, he had the position that the wording of the Quran, your words you use is created, the pronunciation, and he didn't conceal that. Like his teacher, Imam al-Bukhari, had the same position.
Al-Hafid ibn Kathir, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said in his biographical entry for Al-Karabisi, Ahmed B. Hanbal used to speak negatively about him because of the issue of pronunciation, and he, Al-Karabisi, used to speak negatively about Ahmed as well, and for that reason the people abstained from taking from him, Al-Karabisi. I say, what I have seen from him is that he said The speech of Allah Ta'ala is uncreated from every angle, except that my pronunciation of the Quran is created. Whoever does not believe that one's pronunciation of the Quran is created is a disbeliever. This is also relayed from Abu Qadi and Dawood bi Ali ibn Ali al-Zahiri. Imam Ahmed used to
Zahiri. Zahiri
Zahiri.
was a madhab in the early days of the Muslim nation. It died out. Their last big imam was Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri, but the madhab died after his time.
Imam,
Meaning it vanished. No one followed it.
Imam Ahmed used to shut his door in order to close the discussion regarding the createdness of the Quran. Another Imam who believed that the pronunciation of the Quran is created was Imam
Say that
Muhammad.
again. Imam Ahmed what?
Imam Ahmed used to shut this door in
Oh,
order
okay.
to
It says his door. I said, no, he
I'm
used to close
sorry.
the door on this subject.
Excuse me, sorry. Imam Ahmed used to shut this door in order to close the discussion regarding the createdness of the Quran.
Right. So he just said the Quran ghayrul makhluq and nothing else, no more discussion. But some of those scholars, like Al-Bukhari and others in his time too, they went a little further, to distinguish between the eternal speech of Allah and that which is printed in the book, that which was recited in the tongue, and that which is memorized. And they went more detail. Imam Ahmed didn't like that. He's like, just the Quran is not created, and stop. Any other further explanation and going into these details, he didn't like it, right? And he censored whoever did it. However, those who did it, their position wasn't wrong. It wasn't that Imam Ahmed said that one's recitation of the Quran is eternal without a beginning. Obviously, that's not. When you say Bismillah, the ba comes before the sin, and the sin becomes for the meme, and it is articulation of letters and sounds and a language. And of course, the speech of Allah is not like that. So what he wanted is that the whole door be closed. So don't even discuss those details. That was the position of Imam Ahmed. And that was a position among the positions of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now,
Another Imam who believed that the pronunciation of the Quran is created was Imam Muhammad bin Jarir al-Tabari.
Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Do you know who Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari is? Does anyone know who that is? Let's see your knowledge of scholars. Who is Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari? He's famous. The Mufassir, right, the famous scholar of tafsir who died in the beginning of the 4th century. Ibn Jarir, his famous book, it is one of the largest books of tafsir al-Quran, 30 volumes. It's called Tafsir al-Tabari, right? Now, great.
May Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him.
And he is also a famous historian, right, Adil? He wrote a book, Tariq Tabari.
This is one of the issues for which he was rebuked by some of the bigoted Hanbalis. Al-Hafid ibn Kathir said, some turmoil took place between al-Tabari and the Hanbalis. I believe it was because of the issue of pronunciation, and he was accused of schisms. They requested that a debate take place
of being a Shia. He was accused of being a Shia.
They requested that a debate take place between him and them. So Ibn Jarir came for the debate, but no one among them showed up. The Hanbalis exaggerated about this issue and became very bigoted regarding it. They maintained that the belief in pronunciation led to the belief in the createdness of the Quran. The matter is not as they claimed, and indeed, the truth cannot be safeguarded by falsehood, and Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Here, there is a big thing, and this is a habit. Get to understand what a person says before you accuse them of something. Because we have this concept. You said this means this, so you this. And that doesn't work. You said this means this, and since this means this, even though you didn't say this, but it means this to me, so you are this, right? So this is a bad approach. Really, we need to see what is intended and what is understood by the speaker when he speaks before we give a final judgment. Now,
Yes, the Quran is the uncreated speech of Allah Ta'ala and an attribute from the attributes of His exalted essence. However, this truth cannot be safeguarded by the falsehood of denying the contingency and creation of what subsists within a created being and rebuking those who speak of it. The
now,
truth in this matter is with Al-Qarabisi, Ibn Kulab, Al-Bukhari, Abu Thawr, Dawood, Al-Muhasibi, Al-Tabri, and others upon their path. As for Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, radiallahu anhu, and by extension, those who believe as he did, his words are interpreted as closing the door of this discussion so as to prevent the belief in pronunciation from leading to belief in the createdness of the Quran itself.
here I want to share something with you just as a thought, and inshallah we'll stop here and we'll pick up tomorrow, inshallah. Uh, uh, Sometimes you may find all of these things like a lot. Why are we talking about all these details? Why we're going into a lot of these details? And I want you to keep in mind that normally it is better and more fitting to just teach a person the basics of the religion and they learn it and then they know their basics. And if they want to, go further, you teach them more advanced things, right? And that's the normal case and that's the preferred case. However, we live in a time where common people refuse to be common people. They want to be common people who want to be scholars, except when it comes to do scholarly work. You follow what I mean? So if you come just tell a person, this is the belief of Al-Sunna, and here's what you need to learn, the first thing usually is going to come out of their mouth is what? I'm asking you all, when you come this way, this is the belief of Islam, this is what we're supposed to believe, what's the first thing that's going to come out their mouth? Usually in our time, let's be honest, we all live in our time. What's the first thing that's going to come out their mouth? Hmm? Right? How many agree with this statement? Where's the dalil? Right? You tell somebody this is the belief in Islam, where's your dalil? Where you get that from, right? Right? This is the common response, right? So it's never like there's no trust in teachers, there's no trust in anyone, right? No respect. So so when you say where's the dalil, now let me ask you something. Where do you think people got that from? Where did they get that idea from? To start talking about where's the dalil? What's your dalil? Where do you think that came from? Because I grew up all my life in Muslim environment, right? Around people who followed Islam, whether they were Sunni or different. I've never heard that as a kid, ever. People never go to the Imam when I was growing up, and I'm saying I've been around a long time, go to the Imam and say, where's your dalil? I've never heard that coming up until the last 20 years. So that came from a certain segment of people. Now, they put in the common people that where your dalil has always been a job of scholars, not common people. And I'm showing you something with how it made a difficulty for the Muslims, right? So now, all what we've been reading is what? A bunch of what? What we've been reading about Ibn Kulab and about this whole thing about Ash'ari has been a bunch of what? Hmm? I'm making sure y'all following me. A bunch of dalil, statements of the scholars who said this, what is the evidence, and asking for dalil, right? Because when you ask for dalil and proof, well, how are you saying this? Because of this, because of this, because of this. Then when we start giving all the proofs, what's the next thing that follows from the common people who asks for proof? What usually comes next? Usually what comes next, that's too much. I can't take in all that. Why? Right? So we're gonna have to make up our mind, right? We're gonna have to make up our mind. What? Do we want proof? Do we don't want proof? Or are we willing to follow? Right? So you're gonna have to make up your mind somewhere. So here, what our point is, if you want to start learning us, unfortunately, because of the circumstances we live in, we're going to have to go above a little bit what we are normally required to do in religion, right? Normally, we just follow trustworthy teachers, and that's it, right? And if we want to be students of knowledge or scholars, we'll go to that next level. But they've made an environment where you can't do that. You're going to have a little bit of extra knowledge, right? Right? You're going to have a little bit extra knowledge. So what I encourage you to do is slowly but surely start getting in the habit of memorizing names, memorizing scholars, because the idea of Quran and Sunnah, I'm going to just give you a verse and I'm going to give you a hadith. You know what's inside that claim? Is that the person who gives you a verse and gives you a hadith is qualified to interpret it. So that's why they don't mention scholars, because they are the scholar in their mind. I read the Quran and I read the hadith and I give the interpretation. And that's not the real position, because that interpretation you're given should have been understood by scholars who were masters in those fields, right? And that's something that I think we miss, right? If the person says, the hadith means this. Who said that? You, right? And who agreed with, even if you said it? Were there any scholars that were commentators on these books of hadith that agreed with what you're saying? Is that understanding? But that takes another level of learning, right? Which all of us may not have. And that's why there is chains of narration, trustworthy scholarships. That's why we have madhabs. That's why we have schools of fields and fields of study and experts in each field. That's all that's for. And that's why we got to know all these scholars. So we know who was an expert in what field and what they said about the field. So it's a process. I guess that's my point. Am I clear what I'm mentioning? Is there any questions? We can stop now if there's no questions. But if there, we'll take a few questions if they are there. Allah, it's a process. We'll get it. It's a process. We can do it. We must do it for the safety of our religion and future generations of Muslims from among us, because we have to learn. Mm. Tayyip, tonight we have the Black Imams Roundtable, and we're going to be talking about how to extract lessons from our Islamic history in America. That's going to be our topic. I've been so busy, didn't put the flyer together. But tonight we're going to talk about our benefits that we can extract from our Islamic history here in America, especially in the African American community. So we're going to have that discussion tonight, inshallah. So we'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock for the Black Imams Roundtable. Let me see. What is the question? Meaning, what is meant by the saying the Quran wasn't created, because the Quran is the speech of Allah as an attribute of Allah. And the attributes of Allah do not have a beginning, so they're not created. They always existed. Allah existed eternally with His self and His attributes. So that's what is meant by the Quran is not created. The Quran meaning the kalam of Allah, the speech of Allah. I don't know. I think people just, we've turned religion into a game unintentionally. We've turned religion into a game unintentionally. I don't think that's what we intended, but that's what we end up doing, and we should fix that. What qualifies one to become a mufassir? Too much. They need Arabic language. They need to know different types of verses. They need to know sciences of the Quran and much more. A lot, a whole lot. Maybe one day we'll talk about it in detail. Who was Abu Hassan Ash'ari teacher? Oh, from the Mu'tazila, his name was Al-Jubai. But that was his original teacher. But he left that teacher and followed the way of Al-Sunna, Al-Jubai. Tayyib, barakallahu bikum. May Allah reward you all. Inshallah, we'll see you tonight for the Black Imams Roundtable. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam bi sir asrar al-Fatiha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.